is because it might be connected to my hotspot. That would make sense.
That was live before you got
Yeah. What, Jamaris, will you hit the lights? And TJ, will you hit those lights? Okay, so we are going to play the song all the way through. Please remember that this is being recorded, so if you are experiencing any technological difficulties and your Google Meet on my channel later this afternoon.
So I'm supposed to write those lyrics down?
No, we're just going to answer the questions. Y'all gonna sing along today?
I guess, yeah.
Halfway across the floor where we're standing on the ground. Screaming across the way, can't hear the sound. No fair trials, no treat, no liberties, no tea. Colonized America, we don't stand for tyranny. Okay. And it's too late.
Let him hit it.
It's too late.
You gotta do a little.
Picture foolish tags, red the acts, and they just won't do.
I can't see you all right.
We wanna make it clear we believe this much is true.
3 things, remember?
All men were created with certain unalienable rights. These life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's too late to apologize.
Little hands, little hands.
It's too late. I said it's too late to apologize. It's too late.
Do I need it? Do it.
Good morning, Champion students. I apologize for the interruption. We're having some internet issues. It appears to be up now. However, it is running very slowly. So we are aware that there is an issue. There's not a whole lot we can do, but we are aware of the situation. Kindergarten, we are going to go ahead and try to move forward with the assemblies. The rest of everyone else, please be ready to log on at your assigned time so that we can keep this moving all day, or at least all morning. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along.
You did a solo.
Y'all ready to snatch the wig? You ready to snatch it? Can I get a little guitar? Come on, TJ, give me a little guitar. Give me, oh, come on, TJ, you on camera. Give him a little guitar. A little guitar. Oh, and on the recording, that's sad. Come on, Cadence, you gonna be my guitarist? Yes. Okay, now you gotta get Mariah Carey. We'll be going over, it is lagging quite a bit. We're lagging. So we need to go ahead and catch up on the George versus George. Bow, 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 bow. So, we got to get y'all caught up because y'all are a little bit behind. So make sure we are working super hard today. If your internet is lagging, again, this will be available for you after the show, after the lesson on my channel. So we are on slide 11. So my face-to-face humans just write 11 at the top, and then you can answer the 2 questions. Okay, so remember we are practicing our ACT Aspire testing strategy, and we are, okay, hold on guys. Don't forget, I'm going to try and refresh and leave the meet and come back to see if that works, because it's just loading. Stand by. Okay. Update, that didn't help, but that's okay. Present now, your entire screen. Okay, so we are going to be practicing our ACT Aspire testing strategies. And we are going to, when you get a reading passage, do you read the passage first?
No.
What do you do first?
No. Read the question. Read the question.
You read the what?
Read the question.
You read the questions. Good job. So let's go ahead and read the questions so we know what we are looking for and listening for as we are reading. Numero uno, number 1. What was the cause of England's high level of cultural achievement, and how did this compare to America? So I will explain that. So a culture is something that a group of people, it's practices or traditions that a group of people have together, right? So the people in England have a very high level of cultural achievement, which means they have a lot of culture, and it's very like bougie. They have a bougie level of cultural achievement. So it's asking, what was the cause of this? So we're going to give some examples of their high level of cultural achievement, and then we're going to compare. We talk about comparing and contrasting. We're going to compare it to America. And then number 2, we are going to make a prediction. What does predict mean? It's a power verb. To tell what you think will happen before it happens, right? Right. So predicting means that you're going to tell what you think will happen before it actually happens. So it's in the future. So we are going to predict what feelings the people of England will have about the American uprising. So we will keep those in our noggins as we read. So this is a look at the life of King George and his countrymen. George III was 22 years old when he succeeded his grandfather as the king in 1760. So that means that he took over and became king when he was 22 years old. Just to put that into perspective, I'm 27. So King George was 5 years younger than me when he became the king of England. Isn't that crazy? So up until this point, we also, pause, everybody pause. Up until this point, how do you see King George like as a leader? Do you think that he's a nice person? How do you think? How do we think of him as a person? I need y'all to raise your hands and yes, Lanisha.
Well, but I think when he wasn't a king, he was a nice person. When he turned to a king, you think he is king, and since he can take over the business and everything, because he's king.
Right.
Everybody gets everything and go on.
Okay, so what Lanisha said was she thinks that before he became a king, he was probably a pretty nice person, but when he became a king, he kind of got a little power hungry, right? No. So we kind of see him as a not so nice person right now, right? So we're reading about King George's life. So we're going to see, remember, there are two sides to every story. Every story. So King George, or George III, was only 22 when he became the king in 1760. He was married to a German princess named Charlotte. They would become the parents of 15 children. The king was absolutely devoted to his family. That means he was dedicated. He was a great husband and a great father. Y'all, that was more normal back then. Can we stay focused? Thank you. So, he was a very good father and a very good husband. He was dedicated to his wife and to his kids. So, does that sound like a bad man? Not really. Their favorite home was... Oh, go ahead.
Okay, what word?
I was just hearing no.
You what?
Never mind.
Oh, okay. Their favorite home was a palace in the English countryside, surrounded by roses, pinks, carnations, and orange, lemon, and tea trees. But they spent most of their time in a smaller red brick mansion called the Buckingham House, usually known as the Queen's House in London, England, the capital of Great Britain, where the king worked. So that's actually called Buckingham Palace now. And if we have time at the end of this lesson, I've actually been to Buckingham Palace where the Queen lives. Yeah. So I will show y'all pictures from there. I have a picture of me in front of it, and I think I have a picture of my mom and dad in front of it. London, with its 740,000 inhabitants, was the biggest city in Europe and the center of British government. What's another word for British government?
Oh, wow.
Parliament. Remember, the British government, another word for the British government is Parliament. Everyone say British government, Parliament. British government, Parliament. Parliament. British government, Parliament. It's okay, sis. It's okay. You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. All right. London's residents were proud of their long history and high level of cultural achievement. That sounds like it might be able to answer question 1, so keep listening. For fun, I don't see people with pencils. We just said London's residents were proud of their long history and high level of cultural achievements. Number 1 says, what was the cause of England's high level of cultural achievement? So we're going to discuss a few examples of their high level of cultural achievement. It's on the board. For fun, the people went to masked balls and the theater. They gambled at cards, dice, and roulette. They belonged to all sorts of fancy clubs. They met at coffee houses, taverns, chicken fights, chop houses, and gardens. Noisy streets teemed with horses, carriages, and ballad singers, flower sellers and fishmongers, and ladies and gentlemen in fancy white wigs wearing all the latest fashions. So, those are all good examples. Those are all examples of the culture in London. Do y'all remember that we're being recorded? And I don't see any hands raised. It's still not raised. So I'm going to read that again. For those of you that are at face-to-face humans, or you don't have to write down the questions, guys. Just write down number 1 and then write down your answer. For my face-to-face humans and my virtual humans, I'm going to read that list again, and it's a list of examples of things that were a cultural achievement, a high level of cultural achievement, some cultural things related to London back in that time. So you need to just jot down a few of these as your answer, and then we'll discuss the second part because this question has two parts. Just like the ACT Aspire, you need to make sure that if a question has two questions, you answer both parts of the question.
When you talking about the culture, can you please talk it slowly?
Yes, yes. I'm going to read it again and I'm going to slow it down. So, London's residents were proud of their long history and high level of cultural achievement. For fun, they went to masked balls and the theater. They gambled with cards and dice and played roulette. They belonged to all sorts of fancy clubs. They met at coffee houses and taverns, chicken fights and chop houses and gardens. Makai, if you would just follow my directions, you wouldn't be frustrated, my friend. I've asked everybody to just write down the answers. I know, I need you to write down the answers. Noisy streets teemed with horses, carriages, ballad singers, flower sellers, fishmongers, and ladies and gentlemen in fancy white wigs wearing all the latest fashions. So let me show you this little cartoon of their streets. You see all of them in their wigs? Lady up there in her wig. So those are all examples. Now, London had been established, right? That was already an established city. So how did this compare to America? When those people came over from Great Britain to America, they were still being technically ran by the British government or the Parliament. But did they have a culture of their own in America yet?
No.
Why not? Because they just got there. So the second question said, how does this compare to America? So you need to say in like one quick sentence, one quick little excerpt, you need to explain that even though they probably brought some of that culture over with them to America because of their clothes or some of the foods that they eat, they didn't have the facilities, they didn't have everything they needed in order to keep that culture alive because they just got there. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to answer question 1. You've got about 2-3 minutes. Not right now, my friend.
I'm going to watch the
You're going to what?
I'm going to watch. I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, I need you to be typing, my friend. We got to answer these questions. You should be typing your answer to question 1. It's on slide 11. You should be typing your answers. Yeah, we need you to. I need to make sure that you're typing your answers. Everybody. I need everybody to be typing their answers. This is the answer to the first question on slide 11. You've got about another minute and a half, 2 minutes to make sure that your answer looks great. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm.
I'm not cold.
Is it cold in here to you? All right, take about 30 more seconds. All right, now we actually can go ahead and answer question 2 because it's kind of your opinion. So, number 2 says, predict what feelings the people of England will have about the American uprising. So, let's say you stayed in Great Britain, you stayed in London, but somebody you know, maybe your friends or even maybe your family members, went over to the colonies. And then all of a sudden the colonies decided, hey, we don't want to be a part of that country anymore. We want to make our own country. How would that make you feel? It might be a little scary because you might be scared for your friend or family. Do you think you'd be sad? Maybe a little sad? Maybe a little mad? You think you might feel just like a little bit betrayed?
Angry because English Highland can't be built because no more tractors for them. They're
Right.
not there anymore.
Right. So those are all good options. Those are all good options for how you can predict what the people in England might feel about the American uprising. They might feel betrayed. They might feel sad. You tell me how you think that you would feel if you lived in England and you heard about this group of people that used to be British just like you, went over a different country and they're like, no, we're starting our own country. Peace out, bye. How would that make you feel? So how predict what the English people felt about the American uprising.
So I gotta say I will.
You would start. How would you start this? If you were flipping the prompt, you would say,
Do you know?
I predict the people of England would feel. Makai, the internet's going. I'm not Makai. Sorry, Malachi. The internet's going a little bit slow. So if you could grab a piece of paper and write down your answers on that. That's good. So you're just gonna write down your answers for now, and then you can go back and type it in later, because the internet's going a little slow. So while y'all are answering question 2, I'm gonna finish this section of reading. Just listen to it in the back of your brain. But the overcrowded city had its share of problems too. The death rate was high. All the coal that residents used as fuel caused black rain and thick, sooty smog. Food and drinking water were often unhealthy, riots were common, and public hangings drew rowdy mobs. Thousands of beggars and pickpocketers were evidence of poverty run amok. The English, so the people in Great Britain of England, the English were convinced that the rest of the British Empire was backward and uncivilized. King George ruled 31 colonies and other possessions in many parts of the world, all the way to Honduras. Throughout England, people argued constantly about world politics, but they would soon argue especially hard about the uprising over in America. Dun, dun, dun. So, we are... there we go. So that was a look at King George and from his side of things, at his estate and his countrymen, at his life. So now we're going to look at the other George Washington. And we're going to talk about, it says, a look at the life of George Washington and his countrymen. So we are on slide 12. Make sure your screen, it looks like my screen, and you're on slide 12. Face-to-face humans, just draw a line underneath the ones you just did and write 12. Great job. All right. Can everybody give me a thumbs up? Is everybody with me? Virtual humans, can you raise your little hand if you need help finding slide 12? Raise your little virtual Google Meet hand if you need help finding slide 12. Okay. I'm assuming that means everybody's got it. Good job. All right. A look at the life of George Washington and his countrymen. George Washington was married to a wealthy widow named Martha Custis. So a widow means that this woman had been married before, but her husband had passed away, her first husband. Tiny, outgoing, and plump, Martha was a charming hostess. More than 2,000 guests visited their Mount Vernon home in the year before 1775. Martha had 2 young children from her previous marriage, and George Washington adored them as his own. So let me show you this picture real quick. This is a picture of George Washington right there. And that's Martha. And those are her kids. Now this little house in the background that isn't so little, that's their Mount Vernon home. So we're going to talk about here in the next paragraph how that was a huge house with a huge estate, like a bunch of land. And George Washington kind of turned it into his own little village, a little self-contained community. So let's keep reading. Oh, what did Miss Shelton forget to do?
Oh, I forgot.
What did I forget to do?
You forgot to read the question.
I forgot to read the questions.
Wow.
I'm an imperfect human. Okay, pause. Boop.
Predict how the American made their living.
Right. Okay, so question 1 that we're going to be listening for is predict how the Americans made their livings. So, made their livings means like how did they get money? What was their job? How did they sustain a regular life? So, we're going to listen and look for in this book ways that we think Americans might have been able to make their living. And then number 2 says, why did America need so many manufactured goods? So manufactured goods are things that are made usually in another place and then brought in or imported into America. So we're going to read about both of those things. Okay, so sorry, Miss Shelton's an imperfect human. All right. The couple enlarged Mount Vernon. So remember, we're talking about George Washington and his wife, Martha. The couple enlarged Mount Vernon into an enormous self-contained community. Washington grew tobacco, then switched to wheat. Besides raising mules, sheep, hogs, and prize bulls, he also bred horses, foxhounds, netted tons of fish, and grew such things as wild grapes, Indian corn, oats, clover, flax, hemp, and nut, apple, pear, apricot, and cherry trees. That's a lot going on.
Then what you worked on?
These are just all the things that were growing on the Mount Vernon estate.
So
Yes.
can you write this on the picture?
That makes sense. That makes sense because he lived on a farm.
Yeah, so remember George Washington was a farmer, so it does make sense. Good job, Malachi. He even grew orange trees that spent the winter in his greenhouse. Gardeners, shoemakers, blacksmiths, weavers, foremen, and sometimes Washington's nieces and nephews all lived on the estate. Like all other plantation owners at the time, Washington was a slave owner. By 1775, he owned 135 people. It's not good. It's not good. Back then, obviously, slavery was still a thing. And yes, then Lincoln became the president.
So neither of them are good people.
So there's two sides to every story because, right, all we talked about before was how we thought King George was kind of a meanie pants. But now we're looking at George Washington and we're kind of having to assess both sides of the situation. Let's keep reading. About 90% of the colonists in America lived out in the country, where new arrivals from Europe were amazed to find farmland, forests, fish, and game as far as the eye could see. So much fertile territory made it possible to supply Great Britain with raw goods such as furs, flour, iron, tobacco, and lumber in return for manufactured goods, including cloth, shoes, furniture, and tea from Great Britain. So let me pause. So when they got here, all of these colonists were amazed to see all of this land, right? So many forests and fish and animals. So they were able to get flour and iron and tobacco from the, areas around them. And then they were able to get furs from the animals. 5 things: furs, flour, iron, tobacco, and lumber. Is that enough to start a whole city? You need more things. You need more things, right? So they were able to trade with Great Britain in return for clothing, shoes, furniture, and tea. So number 2 says, why did America need so many manufactured goods? Because when they got to America, they only had a limited amount of resources, and they needed to trade with Great Britain in order to have everything they needed. That would be a really good answer. for number 2.
Gotta catch up.
Just saying. Because when they got here, they did not have everything they needed. If you are a virtual human at home, I need you to make sure that you are typing on slide 12, number 2.
Oh, I can type on number 2 now.
Good deal. So I'm going to give you about 2 more minutes to answer number 2. Why did America need so many manufactured goods? But that's not important. That's not related to the question. Mm-mm.
My stuff going slow.
I'm sorry, my friend. This will be available to you after we get done with this lesson later on this afternoon. If you'd like to watch it, it will be available on my channel. So you can wait and fill out the answer to the question and watch the video later and answer the questions then, okay?
What about my YouTube?
It'll be unblocked then.
Okay.
Take about 1 more minute. Make sure you have your answer for question 2 and that it looks great. Okay, so we still have to answer question 1, which is y'all are going to predict how the Americans made their living. So these next 3 paragraphs, we're going to be talking about different jobs that different people in the colonies had based on their socioeconomic status. Everyone say
Socioeconomic
economic
Economic
status.
status.
So if you think socio, you kind of think of social, right?
Yes.
Economic reminds you of economy, so like money. So it's like your social status, how much money you have. That's what we're talking about. So based on that, and back then, remember it was still based on the color of your skin because this is back in the 1770s. That's how you could figure out, that's how you knew what kind of job you were able to get. So this will be really helpful to predict how the Americans made their living. In small but bustling port cities such as Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and Charleston, whaling and shipbuilding were already major industries. And there were lumber mills, flour mills, factories, firehouses, and colleges. Streets, some paved, most full of mud or dust, overflowed with ox carts, horses and carriages, chimney sweeps, sailors, and carriers of wood. In local taverns, young girls danced lively jigs with their boyfriends. The most well-off, best-educated people, so make sure you're listening, the most well-off, best-educated people were usually planters like George Washington, merchants, doctors, ministers, or lawyers. So who do you think at that point in time was the most well-off, which means they had the most money and were the most educated? So George Washington, but it says like George Washington. But in the groups of people that came over to America, what kind of groups of people do you think were in that group?
Colonies.
People who did like
What'd you say?
Colonies.
So yes, the colonies. But let's keep reading, and then let's see if you pick up on what I'm asking. So next came a very large middle class that included small farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, craftsmen, and fishermen. The poorest were unskilled workers, indentured servants, and of course black slaves from Africa who had been bought, sold, and held in bondage in all 13 of the colonies. So do you think that if you were a person of color living at this point in these colonies, that you would have the opportunity to be in that higher tier of the socioeconomic status of being a merchant or a doctor or a minister?
No.
Mm-mm. No. So all of those were options for that you could put for number one. Predict how the Americans made their livings. So any of those things that we discussed, you can also discuss the different socioeconomic statuses and how that may have impacted your ability to make a living. So I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to answer question one. I want you to talk about some of the jobs you could do that I just listed, and maybe discuss the different socioeconomic statuses and how that might affect your ability to get a job. I'm not going to count off for spelling. So I'll repeat this last paragraph again. The most well-off, best-educated people were usually planters like George Washington, merchants, doctors, ministers, or lawyers. Next came a very large middle class that included small farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, craftsmen, and fishermen. The poorest were unskilled laborers, indentured servants, and of course black slaves from Africa who had been bought, sold, and held in bondage in all 13 of the colonies. So all of those are things that you could discuss for number one, and then maybe bring up the different socioeconomic status and how that might impact your ability to get a job.
Did the slaves help like fight in the war?
That's a very good question. That would be an awesome question for you to Google.
Can I help you catch up?
Rajai, I'll get you caught up, okay? Make sure that you are typing your answer for number one on slide 12. If you are not typing your answer for number one on slide 12, I need you to hurry, 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 and do so at this time. I'm going to give you about 1 more minute. Okay, hopefully everybody at home, all my virtual humans, had time to answer both of those. We've got one more paragraph. Yep. Many colonists wanted to settle the new territory they had helped to win during the 7 Years' War. Remember, that was the portion of the French and Indian War that we discussed. No, later, but not at this point. This is just the last paragraph. Many colonists wanted to settle the new territory they had helped to win during the 7 Years' War, which is the part of the French and Indian War that we discussed a couple days ago. But Great Britain made it illegal. So these colonists wanted to move further west. So they had showed up, if this is America, they had showed up over here. They wanted to start moving west. But Great Britain made it illegal. London thought it was fairest and safest to reserve these lands for the Native Americans who had always lived and hunted there. George Washington agreed with plenty of other colonial settlers who thought the law unfairly limited their rights, and they poured into the West anyway. So basically they came to the far east corner of the United States when they showed up for the 13 original colonies, right? And Great Britain was like, look, guys, I know that we technically won that land during the French and Indian War, but that's not fair to the settlers who are already there, or to the Native Americans who are already there. So don't go any further west. Let those people have their land. But then this last line says they poured into the West anyway. So, hello. Okay. All right, so today we just have one more slide to do. But hey guys, we're all caught up with the other two classes. So woo! Everyone give a little woo woo.
It's the
Little woo woo. Okay, so we've just got to do this slide and then we're
We're
done.
ready for specials.
So, and then when we get back from specials, we are going to, yes, but there's also the assembly. It's the growth assembly. Okay.
So, are you supposed to stay on here?
Yes, you need to stay on here. Oh my goodness. We are still working, my friends. I'm trying to figure out why we're talking. We're still working. So you need to be on slide 13. Hello.
Miss Shelton,
Mm-hmm.
my camera keeps coming on, then it come back off.
It's okay, my friend. It's probably just the internet. It's okay. I understand. So, I am going to, it is 8:53. When we get back from specials at 9:45, I need my humans that are my virtual humans, my at-home humans, to be back here, not at 10:10. I need you to be back at 9:45. Do you understand? Because we have to get caught up. Have to. Okie doke. So we will be, one second. We will be back on here recording live at 9:45. Okay, I'll stop rhyming. So stay on here for specials, but I'm going to go ahead and quit the recording.